The moon hung low in the sky, shrouded by a veil of thin, wispy clouds. In the quiet countryside of Japan, villagers whispered tales of the Gashadokuro, a monstrous skeleton said to rise from the earth when the spirits of the dead grew restless. For generations, these stories had been dismissed as mere superstition, a way to keep children from wandering into the woods after dark. But one night, a young man named Haruto would discover the terrifying truth. Haruto was a wanderer, a ronin without a master. The loss of his family to famine had left him with a restless spirit, and he roamed from village to village in search of meaning. On a chilly autumn evening, he found himself in a small hamlet, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills. The villagers eyed him warily as he approached, their faces pale and drawn. "Old woman, stranger, you must leave before the sun sets." Haruto: "Why?" "Old woman, the Gashadokuro. It comes when the night is darkest, its bones creaking like the trees in a storm. It hungers for blood." Haruto's lips curled into a faint smile. He had heard many such tales in his travels, each more outlandish than the last. Yet the fear in the woman's eyes gave him pause. Still, he was not one to be swayed by stories. He assured her he would be careful and took refuge in an abandoned shrine at the edge of the village. As the sun dipped below the horizon, an unnatural silence fell over the land. Not a single bird chirped, nor did the wind rustle the leaves. Haruto sat by a small fire, sharpening his blade. The air grew heavy, and a faint metallic scent wafted through the shrine. Then he heard it, a faint rhythmic thudding that seemed to come from deep within the forest. It grew louder, accompanied by a sound like the grinding of stones. Haruto's hand instinctively went to his sword. From the darkness emerged a skeletal hand the size of a tree trunk, its bony fingers gleaming in the moonlight. Haruto's breath caught as the rest of the creature came into view. The Gashadokuro towered over the shrine, its hollow eye sockets glowing with an eerie red light. Haruto wasted no time. He darted out of the shrine, the ground shaking beneath him as the Gashadokuro pursued. Its enormous feet crushed everything in its path, leaving deep imprints in the soil. Haruto's mind raced as he tried to recall the stories he'd heard about the creature. They said it was formed from the bones of those who had died in anguish, their spirits bound by hatred and sorrow. Haruto, if it is born of suffering, perhaps it can be calmed. But how could he reason with a monster so consumed by rage? He sprinted into the forest, the skeletal giant's bony hands clawing at the trees behind him. Branches snapped like twigs, and the ground was littered with splinters and debris. Haruto stumbled upon a small hut nestled within a grove of ancient trees. An elderly man with a long white beard stood at the doorway, holding a staff adorned with talismans. "Hermit, you've brought it here. Haruto, do you know how to stop it?" Hermit: "The Gashadokuro is bound by the pain of the forgotten dead. To lay it to rest, you must perform a purification ritual, but beware, it will not let you succeed without a fight." The hermit handed Haruto a small vial of sacred water and a scroll inscribed with ancient prayers. Hermit: "Go to the clearing at the heart of the forest. There you will find the remains of the souls that bind it. Pour the water over them and recite the prayer." Haruto thanked the hermit and made his way to the clearing. The Gashadokuro was relentless, its skeletal form crashing through the forest as it pursued him. At last, Haruto reached the clearing where a pile of bones lay scattered beneath a twisted tree. The air was thick with sorrow and faint whispers echoed around him. He uncorked the vial and began to pour the sacred water over the bones. The Gashadokuro let out an ear-piercing shriek, its red eyes blazing with fury. Haruto drew his sword, prepared to defend himself as the giant lunged at him. He recited the prayer, his voice steady despite the terror that gripped him. The Gashadokuro's movements grew frantic, its massive hands swiping at Haruto. One blow sent him sprawling, but he clung to the scroll, refusing to falter. As he finished the prayer, the sacred water glowed, and a brilliant light engulfed the clearing. The Gashadokuro let out one final mournful cry before collapsing into a heap of bones. The whispers faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. When the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, Haruto found himself alone in the clearing. The bones had turned to dust and the air was light and fresh. He returned to the village, where the relieved villagers greeted him with gratitude. "Old woman, the curse is lifted." Haruto stayed in the village for a few days, helping to rebuild and sharing his tale. When he finally departed, he carried with him a renewed sense of purpose. The encounter with the Gashadokuro had shown him the weight of unaddressed sorrow and the importance of remembrance. And so Haruto continued his journey, not as a wanderer, but as a man determined to bring peace to those who had been forgotten. Weeks later, Haruto arrived in another village where whispers of restless spirits filled the air. This time, the people spoke of a river that glowed red under the moonlight, a place where travelers vanished without a trace. Despite the villagers' warnings, Haruto set out to investigate. The river was as ominous as described, its surface shimmering with an unnatural crimson hue. As Haruto approached, he felt a familiar chill, the same oppressive air that had surrounded the Gashadokuro. He realized that his task was far from over. While the skeletal giant had been defeated, countless other restless spirits still roamed the land. Haruto knelt by the riverbank and whispered a silent prayer. The journey ahead would be perilous, but he was no longer afraid. He had faced the wrath of the Gashadokuro and emerged victorious. Whatever horrors awaited him, he was ready to face them. Not as a man haunted by loss, but as a beacon of hope for the forgotten.